Like scary movie reviews. What's going on, guys? Of course, this month we have the fifth Scream movie releasing into theaters on January the 14th. And I've never seen any of the Scream movies. One thing I'd like to share on this channel is I am still young. So there's a lot of classic movies that I haven't seen. I'm watching for the first time, experiencing for the first time. And, so some of these classic movies may shock people that I haven't seen, but they're like, but there's a reason for it. And that's just, I'm still young, still discovering a lot of these things. But yeah, I watched Scream for the first time today. And this is the 4K. I'm going to show you that. Look at that slipcover. Look at the back to that. This movie was great. No surprise. It's obviously a classic. But this is an interesting movie because this movie came out in the 90s. And in the 90s, there wasn't a good run of horror movies at all. Like, horror was dead. It was a dead genre. It was gone. And Scream came out, revitalized it. But I think why this... but the thing is, people say that, but there still wasn't that many good horror movies after that. And every movie that came out was just a lesser Scream knockoff. I Know What You Did Last Summer, things like that. Not saying that some of those movies aren't, terrible or that good or whatever, but, there is like that kind of... It revitalized the genre to where we got more, but not really more that were successful. And I think that's because a movie like this is very much lightning in a bottle. This is such a creative concept. We have a movie directed by Wes Craven, who did Nightmare on Elm Street. He was making the slasher movies of the 80s, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, and Jason. Those were and other minor slasher movies, but those are the big three. We all know them. Wes Craven was responsible for Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, so he goes on to make a movie that is very much parodying the movies that came out in the 80s and late 70s. Having fun with it, do you like scary movies? It plays on the tropes of those and makes something entirely new. This movie is not... You don't need to understand how those slasher movies work to understand how... to understand and like Scream. Because Scream is very simple. Scream is very much... it's very much a film that stands on its own. The way this film plays out is really good and creative and unique, right? Because, we know do you like scary movies? A very famous phone call thing. Every time that scene happens, it's intense. You're kind of like, oh, the opening of the movie is great. One of the best horror movie openings, just movie openings ever. Really sets the tone for this movie. But that's what I really like about this movie. You see movies that, parody things that they're based on, or like referencing things, and they don't really stand on their own. Like, but this movie absolutely does. It stands the test of time. It's creative. It's unique. It's clever. It's witty. And I think why this movie didn't revitalize the horror genre like some people think. I think it's because this movie is not really scary at all. Like, there's a couple moments I get like goosebumps a little bit, but I'm not really scared by this movie. And the reason I would say that is because this movie is very much just an entertaining slasher movie. And that's kind of what makes this movie... I think that's why it didn't revitalize horror. Because this movie didn't once try to scare you. I think that... I'm sure there's some people who watch this movie and scared by it, but I don't think it's trying to scare you. I think that says more about the person watching the film, that they're just an easily scared person. But I think this movie is a movie that is not scary in the slightest at all. And that's okay, because I think that basically that's why it didn't revitalize horror, because, you know, it didn't really show off what horror could do in this sense. It kind of was just this fun slasher movie. It was more just a slasher movie than a straight up horror movie, which I know slashers are a subgenre of horror, of course, but it's like it was trying to be fun more than it was trying to be scary, if that makes sense. And I think it did a great job at that. It has an entertaining mystery, right? Because the way this ghost face killer is set up, he's very frightening. Like, he's not necessarily scary, but he is creepy, and you do kind of want to know where he is. There's a lot of misleads and interesting directions it goes. It's really good at setting all that up. It's a really good movie. Still holds up. I mean, again, I've had no previous nostalgia, never seen this movie before. First time watching this movie, 10 out of 10. Fantastic.